Get all the news and controversy of the NFL right here on the Blitz Zone with your hosts, Eric Rosen and Jamie Hickson, as they discuss the hot topics concerning your favorite players and team, the winners, the losers, the big plays, and the big hits from around the league. Right here, only on the Blitz Zone.
It's Friday, September 15th, 2017. It's that time of the hour to discuss college and professional football. Welcome to the Week 2 edition of the Blitz Zone. Hi, everybody. I'm Eric Rosen, and we're coming live from the studios of CTV in Staten Island, New York. And with me, as always, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jamie, the Sportsman Hickson.
Isn't internet great, first of all? I'm checking out the NFL's YouTube page on here, and the first thing I'm seeing right now are highlights of Texans versus Bengals from last night. I'm watching every single play that rookie quarterback, Deshaun Watson, made. The more I see this kid, the more I'm convinced he has a chance to be a really good player in this game. He's got to get more reps, though, and with a little bit more experience, he has a chance to be one of the great ones. But that's talk for a little bit later on because there's so much business to discuss right now.
Oh, without a doubt. And you got to watch the run that he made. We'll get into that a bit. But you know what, Jamie? Week 1 of the season. What is your impression so far of the NFL in its infancy right now?
First off, and I just saw that 40-yard run. This kid is just ridiculous. Just saw that 40-yard run right now, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And to answer your question, some went according to form. Others pretty much took me by surprise. For example, seeing the Rams put up 44 points with Jared Goff as their quarterback, that's number one. But then again, that's the type of potential that Goff has that could help the Rams probably get to the next level. That's number one.
Do you think that was a bit of Goff or Sean McVay with his new game plan?
I think it's a combination of both. They really needed a new game plan to try and juice up the offense because it just was not happening with the guys that they had last season.
And I love the fact they brought in Wade Phillips to be their new defensive coordinator and bring that new 3-4 system, and the fact that they didn't need Aaron Donald after all.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he came back, yes, but you know what? They told him, we don't need you right now. To put him on notice that, you know, you pulled this crap off with your hold off, and guess what, Junior? You get to sit down for that little stunt you pulled off. And what about the road teams? This was the week of the road team.
Yeah, this just goes to show you how important winning on the road is. I mean, protecting your home advantage is one thing, but if you could win in this game at least half of your road games and take advantage of your home field, you have an excellent shot of making the postseason.
That's true, because especially you got to be able to go into enemy territory where you know the fans are dead set against you. One of the toughest environments is Seattle.
Yeah.
They call it the 12th man. The Chiefs are, Arrowhead Stadium. People say, for sure. But you know what? If you could put that down for, the Chiefs are really they have such a tough place to play at. And then I would even think Miami is pretty difficult to play, and New England, of course.
Kansas City, Denver, New Orleans because of their loud fan base. Atlanta because of their loud fan base, especially considering that they're now playing in Mercedes-Benz Stadium.
Which is opening this week.
By far, if I had to take a guess which the single worst place to play a road game is, I would have to say Denver, because those fans are so on top of the players, and it's probably the single most difficult, maybe I should rephrase that, because there's also the matter of Kansas City. Kansas City, they play in an outdoor stadium, and their fan base is just off the charts. I mean, don't forget, they once set the record for having the loudest decibel level during a football game. And there's also the matter of Seattle, too. So Seattle, Denver, and Kansas City, by far the three toughest places for any road team to go into.
Seattle's so tough to play in, you can barely hear yourself, let alone think.
Mm-hmm.
That's how – I remember watching a Sunday night football game, and Michelle Tafoya couldn't even get her thoughts across, or barely was able to get her thoughts across with that home field.
And to think, the fans from the other teams rip the Seahawk fans for being so-called bandwagon fans. This is a city that's got a loud and proud fan base, going back to their Kingdome days. If you ever watched a game that took place in the old Kingdome, you would have thought that you had ringing in your ears after attending a game in there. One time I actually saw a Denver-Seattle game. There were 3 consecutive penalties called on the Seahawk fan base for excessive crowd noise.
Which is no longer the issue anymore in the NFL because, there's no way you're going to control the fans and how they react. You know, the only thing that fans are not allowed to do, of course, is throw things onto the field. Otherwise, if you get caught, you will be penalized. You'll be fined. And speaking of places where you could probably end up in jail, Philadelphia.
Oh, forget about it. It's gotten to the point where people cannot feel safe being either at the Link or at the old Veterans Stadium for an Eagle game.
The old Veterans, I heard they actually had a jail cell.
Yeah, they did have a jail cell for unruly fans
in that stadium. And I've seen fights break out. I remember 2015, opening season, Jets were playing the Browns. They beat them 31-10 easily. And McCown, of course, was the starting quarterback at that time. Great that the Jets 2 years later decided to have him as their starting quarterback. McCown gets concussed on this helicopter move.
Yep.
And then I saw Johnny Manziel, a.k.a., Johnny Football, at the time. He throws a nice touchdown to Travis Benjamin at that point. The only bit of offense they had in that game. And then I'm in the 300 section, my brother.
Right.
About 2 sections to my left, down to my left, I see a fight break out between Browns and Jets fans.
What a shock.
I saw a fight with Bills and Jets fans, which is notorious to happen. It happens, unfortunately, at games. Sometimes fans will get,
a little tipsy. Yeah, they can.
Especially during those tailgates. That's why the NFL cut down the amount of hours that tailgating takes place. It used to be from the morning till whenever. Now you can't. The gates don't open till 5 hours before game time.
Yeah.
So for a 1 o'clock game, if you want to tailgate, you have to get there at least. It opens at 8 o'clock. People used to go there 3, 4 in the morning, sometimes even 5 in the morning, and drink from then on. Which I don't know how people can even drink that much. Their livers probably would be killing them by that time.
Yeah,
that's a little unhealthy if you ask me. But yes, there are people who tailgate that long, so that's why the NFL decided to cut that. And they also made rules with selling alcohol that it ends, I think, after like I think the midpoint in the third quarter or halftime. Yeah, at some point in the third quarter, like I think 5 minutes into it, they decide to end selling alcohol too. But yes, they're unfortunate. There are fights between fans. I've seen fans jaw at each other. Like one time I was at a Seahawks-Jets game. These 2 fans were just going at it, from opposite teams and all that.
How long ago was this? Was this about a year or 2 ago?
This was last year when the Jets and the Seahawks, and of course the Seahawks took care of the Jets, no problems whatsoever. And honestly, the Jet fans should not even said anything at the time. Just keep your mouth quiet, folks.
What is there to even
fight
about? Because for one,
and the Seahawks fans shouldn't have started either.
Yeah. I don't know what there is for any of these fans to crow about, especially considering that there's nothing going on with the Jets. And if you thought that last week was bad, well, wait till they get to Oakland.
I know. Now into some news. The saga that is Ezekiel Elliott. The storyline continues, and the NFL now has decided to take action against the appeal, against the trying to appeal the federal court decision that took place last Friday.
This is basically the NFL just trying to show off their muscle. But when you think about it, we already know that the girl lied about being assaulted by Elliott. Well, that's number one.
The NFL deems that that the girlfriend was actually in the right, was right, and what happened. That's what how the NFL interpreted this. They feel as though that Ezekiel Elliott did commit domestic violence against this girl, even though the prosecutors in Ohio say otherwise. I'm sorry, you were saying.
They already know. Well, Zeke and this girl know the real story. And supposedly this girl lied about being assaulted by Elliott. That's number one. Number two, the union was going to back this kid up. as is their prerogative. And number 3, if there is no evidence that points against Elliott, then what is the sense in pursuing this thing even further? This is just the NFL trying to show off their corporate muscle, thinking that they could try and fix things when there's really no fixing to be needed.
Well, they're trying to also save face, too. Just like with Tom Brady last year, they're trying to make sure that nobody gets one over them, that no player gets one over them at all. And especially it doesn't look good for Roger Goodell if he doesn't get his version of justice down. And at the same time, Ezekiel Elliott felt like this case, the NFL went about the wrong way and didn't treat him fairly in this decision. And that's why he decided to fight back, which, again, his prerogative. Mm-hmm. And right now, this story I mentioned last week, this was not going to end, and it's going to keep continuing on. Mm-hmm. Now, some of the other things that we saw this past week was the unfortunate injuries that took place. Like, for instance, David Johnson, 2 to 3 months, he'll be out with a dislocated left wrist. Mm-hmm. He was a huge part of Arizona's offense in 2016. In fact, he was 40% of their offense, combined 20 total touchdowns. He was the number 1 favorite. If you look at every fantasy football league in this country, mm-hmm. whether it's a regular league, PPR, doesn't matter what it is, David Johnson was number 1 on your Christmas list for fantasy players. And now you got to replace him for the next 2 to 3 months. And the unfortunate ACL tear for Allen Robinson, who in 2015 had over 1,400 receiving yards for Blake Bortles. He was sort of a security blanket in the receiving corps. Now he's done for the year. Mm-hmm. We saw the end of holdouts. Finally, Le'Veon Bell ended his holdout. Aaron Donald ended his holdout. And Donald Penn just signed a new 2-year, $21 million contract extension to stay with Oakland, which I feel bad for the Jets this week because he's going to be a happy boy on the field who's going to be snacking on.
Yeah, he's going to be licking his chops that day. And it's interesting that you mentioned all of the injuries that took place because I'm looking at some guys right now and what their statuses are. LaShawn McCoy, 50-50 for the Bills against the Panthers.
Not good if he's not able to play.
Donnell Pumphrey, already placed on injured reserve because of his hamstring. It looks like he's gone for the year. You mentioned one guy named Johnson. Well, how about the defensive back for the Texans, Kevin Johnson? Sprained knee between 4 and 6 weeks. He's going to be out. Jarvis Landry, he got a knee injury. Kenneth Dixon suspended another 2 games in addition to the 4-game suspension that he got for taking PEDs.
Kenneth Dixon from the Baltimore Ravens. Mm-hmm. I know he was in some hot water going to the season. And, so that's pretty much most of the news. We'll get into the recap of Week 1, starting with the Colts-Rams game. Jared Goff gets a huge 306-yard performance and a touchdown, and the defense gets not only 1 but 2 pick sixes off of Scott Tolzien. In fact, the first pass that Tolzien threw was a pick 6. I cannot even believe that even took place. It blows my mind. Trumaine Johnson, 39 yards.
Well, keep in mind, it's Scott Tolzien that the Rams were going up against. Let's see what the Rams can do against a more established opponent in Week 2.
And the Rams won that game 46-9, 17 the points scored by the defense. Even LaMarcus Joyner got a 29-yard pick 6 in the third quarter. The Cardinals had a 16-7 lead going into the fourth quarter and get a 17-9 lead in the third quarter, and they give up 26 straight points to the Lions in Ford Field, 2 big touchdowns, 45 and 10 yards to Kenny Golladay, the rookie third-round pick who has been a godsend even in the preseason. This guy had showed a lot of potential. I remember seeing him in the preseason game against the Jets. Mm-hmm. He's a nightmare to deal with. Along with Golden Tate, that's going to be a scary receiving threat. They won 35-23, and this is why Matthew Stafford is paid the big bucks.
Yeah. At least you could give the Lions credit for being the comeback kids once again, because they came from behind in several games last year and wound up winning. Now they picked up where they left off from last year, but let's see what they can do against a much tougher opponent, because the Lions have the Giants on a Monday night, and the Giants really need to be on their best defensive game plan going up against a guy like Matthew Stafford. who's basically a one-man wrecking crew on offense. I mean, he's got a decent enough supporting cast, but no one who can actually wow anybody, especially coming out of the backfield.
And how about Steelers-Browns? Of course, the Steelers won 21-18. There was a bit of a late scare. DeShone Kizer, despite the fact he got sacked 7 times, which was mostly his fault because as a rookie, he had no pocket awareness to let the ball get out of his hands. He wanted to try and make a play out of nothing. He threw 2 bad interceptions, one of which went to T.J. Watt, if that name's familiar, brother of J.J. Watt, getting in on the action, selected by the Steelers late in the first round. Not only did he have an interception for a touchdown, but he also had 2 sacks in his debut. Yeah, and they won 21-18. But you got to give it up to DeShone Kizer. You know what? He was a much better choice than the other quarterbacks they had in mind.
Yeah. I still give DeShone Kizer a little bit of credit for at least making things close, but it's gotten to the point where the Browns' younger players are going to really be feeling their oats this coming season.
Do you got Commissioner Goodell on your phone?
Well, if it is Commissioner Goodell, I'm not going to be answering that question.
How about Cameron Newton throwing a pair of touchdowns, leading the 49ers to a 23-3 victory over Cam Newton leading the Carolina Panthers to a 23-3 victory over the 49ers. Brian Hoyer unfortunately had a fumble in the first half, and then what happens? A 4-yard pass from Cam Newton to Russell Shepard. And for the 49ers, not a very good start right now to the John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan era right now.
It's only one game. I mean, you have to give this franchise time to try and build something really, really special. But on the other side, Cam Newton is ready to feast after having the disappointing season that he had last year. So other teams that are coming up, they better beware because Cam Newton is going to be ready to work.
Andy Dalton turned the ball over 5 times, 4 interceptions, and a fumble. And, of course, the Bengals could not get a single score. And the fact that Dalton throws into double coverage and Z.J. Mosley picked it off too, well, the Ravens took advantage, winning 20-0, despite the fact that it was a 9-of-17 day for Joe Flacco. But he had a 48-yard catch and run to his new weapon, Jeremy Maclin. They still won 20-0, and the first time that the Bengals been shut out at home in quite some time.
Yeah. Well, you thought that was bad? Well, wait till we talk about the second game, which took place last night, but that's a story for a little bit later.
How about the Seahawks-Packers? The Packers, of course, getting a big touchdown, 6-yard run by Ty Montgomery, and they beat the Seahawks 17-9. Huge game right there.
Just an outstanding defensive effort by the Packers.
Even both teams, to give only that many points. But the thing that really upset me was the Jeremy Lane being out for a supposed punch when really it was not. It was an elbow, and the elbow barely grazed the player. So right there, he should have not been thrown out. I think that had somewhat of an impact. So the referees really need to realize they're not in the preseason. We're in the regular season. Stop making monumental mistakes. Giants, Cowboys. We'll get into that in a bit.
Oh, brother. I don't even want to discuss that game, to be honest with you.
Monday night, Saints visit the Vikings, and Sam Bradford set a new completion percentage record of 27 to 32, 37 passes. 27 to 32. Without a single turnover. 3 of those passes were basically drops. The other 3 of those 5 incompletions were drops by the Vikings receiving corps. But otherwise, Stephon Diggs had 93 yards and 2 scores. You got to dig Stephon Diggs.
And as far as Adrian Peterson, this was a homecoming for him after 10 years playing for the Vikings.
18 yards, 6 carries, though. Not much of a home.
6 carries for 18 yards. But the big story was the little shouting match that he had with Sean Payton on the sidelines, and then what he talked about with the media after the game. He got his name called only 9 times in this game. And as he said it best, I didn't sign up for 9 plays. It's critical that the Saints use him a little bit more if they're going to do anything this season.
Well, sorry, Adrian, but you're not exactly what you were years ago. You're not the elite runner. Your legs are barely intact. And by the way, you should have known damn well when you were going to sign with the Saints that it was Mark Ingram who was the number 1 receiver in that team, and the rookie they just picked up in Alvin Kamara. you are not going to get as many touches as you think you are. You're not getting paid the big bucks that you were getting with the purple and gold. Sorry, I hate to break it to you, Adrian. I respect you, but this is not 4 years ago.
It's not 4 years ago, but he's had a lot of time to recover from his injuries. So I think it's about time that maybe he were to be featured a little bit more in the offense.
Well,
I mean, who's to say that nothing's going to happen to Ingram and that rookie?
But he should have known damn well that there are teams that actually could use a number one of his pedigree, teams that actually needed a running back like him. I don't know if for say Cleveland maybe could have used their services. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe my team, the New York Jets. 29.
Well, they already have Bilal Powell and Matt Forte in their backfield.
I'll be honest.
They didn't get anything done in that Buffalo game.
And Adam Thielen had 157 yards, 9 catches. 29-19, Vikings won on Monday night. Good start for the Purple People Eaters. Now, the Chargers-Broncos, they were up by several scores, and then all of a sudden the Chargers, 2 touchdowns in a 1-minute span in the fourth quarter, and they lose on a blocked field goal attempt.
Yeah, but when you think about it, that first field goal attempt, the coach wound up calling a timeout milliseconds before the ball was snapped. Seriously, if he wants to call a timeout, he has to call it before they lined up in formation. This whole thing about calling a timeout before the ball is snapped, I mean, it's gotten to the point where one of these days somebody's going to get denied a TO in this one. And they were quite frankly lucky to get the TO called off in time.
And the fact that despite everything, Rivers was able to get a touchdown on Keenan Allen and Travis Benjamin and make it a very close game. But unfortunately, that field goal at the end, Anthony Lynn in his debut coaching with the team, but give it up for Vance Joseph and what he did for the Broncos.
Mm-hmm.
First time 2 African Americans making their debut on the same night in Week 1. Yep. It's a huge achievement.
And how about the place kicker for the Chargers of Korean American descent? He's the first Korean American place kicker in the NFL. He's going to be blazing a lot of trails for the Korean football community down the road.
Definitely. And speaking of blazing trails, how about Derek Carr and the trail he's blazing for this Raiders team, defeating the Titans 26-16 and throwing some huge passes to Amari Cooper, and the fact that the Titans decided of all things to do on their first play of the year, an onside kick. That was boneheaded at best. And
you can't fool a team like the Raiders. They're way too smart for that, and they're way too well coached for that.
And the debut of Giorgio Tavecchio, 2 52-yard field goals included in those out of the 4 field goals he had in the day, replacing the 18-year veteran Sebastian Janikowski.
Who, by the way, just ended his holdout, only to be placed on injured reserve because he hurt his back.
Well, they won 26-16, the Raiders, and they unfortunately play our team, which we'll get into a bit in their last week game. Jaguars went into Houston and 10 sacks. Franchise record, 10 sacks from the Jaguars, feasting on both Deshaun Watson and Tom Savage at quarterback. 4 of those 10 sacks by the new member of the team, Calais Campbell, coming on a 4-year, $60 million contract. And one of those sacks led to a fumble recovery by Dante Fowler, which he went in for 53 yards for a score. And they snapped their 6-game skid, the Jaguars, against the Texans.
And how about the debut that Leonard Fournette had with the Jaguars? Exactly 100 yards rushing.
And a touchdown.
I mean, he didn't do anything eye-popping, but he did just enough to keep that Jaguar offense going a little bit.
It was Tom Savage was bland, terrible, disgusting, well, okay, maybe deplorable is a bit of a stretch, but he was
Let's put it this way. Tom Savage is not an NFL starting quarterback. Hands down.
It was so god-awful that they decided in the second half to just have him sit down and go with the guy they moved 10 spots up to get. I'm talking about Deshaun Watson, who came in and he actually they were down 19-0 at that point, and he got them a touchdown, a pass to DeAndre Hopkins, making it 19-7. Unfortunately, Tom Bohannon for the Jaguars got his first career NFL touchdown, making it 26-7. By the way, if that name is familiar, he was an ex-Jet fullback. Mm-hmm. And they won 29-7 at the very end of the game. The Carson Wentz in his sophomore year, and there are no jinx whatsoever because Carson Wentz basically got them back. They were behind by 2 touchdowns, and he led them to a 30-17 victory.
I keep telling you not to sleep on this kid. Carson Wentz is the real deal. And I was in Pennsylvania when that game happened. My fiance, her daughter, and I, we were in a small town called Bangor, Pennsylvania, visiting a mutual friend of ours. And we were able to listen to Merrill Reese calling the action on the Eagles radio network. And lo and behold, Carson Wentz, once again, getting the job done in the opener. Now, let's see what he could do for the full season, because the last 2/3 of last season were pretty stormy for him.
My favorite was when he avoided not 1 but 2 sacks and threw a 58-yard pass to Nelson Aguilar. One of the best plays of the game. They won 30-17.
Wentz is a really good athlete. I mean, not only does he have the height and the arm strength, he's also got some really good athletic ability, and he's also a really tough kid. Don't forget, he won 2 national titles at North Dakota State, one of which was won with broken ribs and with a broken collarbone.
Well, he's got a lot of courage, I gotta say.
The kid's got some guts, let me tell you.
And then, how about this game in Chicago? All it took was a game-ending sack. I couldn't believe this sack that took place at the very end of the game, and they won 23-17, barely by the skin of their teeth. Brooks Reed, really the hero for the Falcons. And how about the fact that Jordan Howard had an easy catch at the one that he dropped that cost his team the victory. They lost 23-17. The only good thing about this Bears team is Tarek Cohen, who had a very good debut, the rookie running back, and Jordan Howard, who's in his sophomore year after having the second most rushing yards behind in terms of rookies behind, and I think even in the league behind Ezekiel Elliott. And just, right now, things are not, it wasn't a great effort by the Bears offensively, but defensively, I think we've seen some improvements.
Well, you also have to consider
but not the secondary. They were terrible.
You also have to consider the disparity in offenses. The Falcons have a quarterback, running back, receiver threat that can just overwhelm teams, while the Bears are basically starting from scratch.
It's not only that. Their receiving core is thin. Cameron Meredith in the preseason tore his ACL. Done for the year. Kevin White, who came out of the NFL from West Virginia in 2015.
4 games in, 2 or 3 NFL seasons?
Yep.
Because he keeps on getting hurt.
Yep.
Does the word bust ring a bell?
Oh, with this guy, he is ultimately he is a bust. And now it looks like he could be done for the year. So their receiving core is consisting of Kendall Wright and the island of misfit toys at wide receiver, while at running back, thank God they got Jordan Howard. Otherwise, this would be a bleak season at best.
Yeah.
And the fact that the secondary gave up a precious 88-yard touchdown to Austin Hooper, that was what also killed them, too, in this game. Well, and they lost 23-17. Now the New York Jets went on the road to Buffalo.
Oh, my God.
And get out your barf bags, Jet fans. They gave up 190 yards on the ground, 110 of which by Shady McCoy, and the Bills won 21-12.
I thought the strength of this Jet defense was supposed to be their plans against the run. I mean, don't get me wrong. LaShawn McCoy is a damn good running back, a very shifty running back.
That's why he's called Shady.
At the same time, you've got to muster up some kind of resistance against LaShawn McCoy and put up some kind of pass rush against Tyrod Taylor. This is Tyrod Taylor we're talking about. It's not like they're going up against Otto Graham or Darryl LaMonica or anybody like that. It's Tyrod Taylor.
And they ended up losing 21-12. And McCown, of course,
And what happens? Well, first off, Josh McCown winds up throwing 2 picks. Another example of why the Jets need to go with their younger quarterbacks, either Bryce Petty or Christian Hackenberg. I would put my money on.
Hackenberg was terrible in the preseason. Are you kidding me? Hackenberg was so bad.
He wasn't totally terrible. He did have
yes.
he had one solid game. Maybe give Bryce Petty a shot. But right now, I would steer clear of the Josh McCown experiment. The Josh McCown experiment is just failing miserably. That's number one.
8
Number
games
two,
it's been since he's won.
why are the Jets not using their running game? They've got 2 guys that they could pound the ball to, and yet they only call what?